here with Cousin Adam. This is episode 9 of WAMCast.
Numero 9.
I don't have any clever pop culture references with number 9 in it to talk about right now. So last week was kind of my crescendo in that department.
Oh, that was the Herbie
yeah.
numero ocho thing, right?
Yeah. I don't even know what 9 is in Spanish.
It's nueve.
There we go.
So
This is our nuevest episode yet.
the 90th. The nine. That's not right. That's German for no. There's too many languages going on here. All right, let's just stick to.
Let's stick to the language we butcher best.
Yeah, definitely. You know, I like to think that we're somewhat linguistic masters, but that we've definitely proven ourselves wrong a few times here on the show. I think it comes out better when we actually write things on paper, perhaps, but
yeah,
I don't really know. So what's on our topic list today?
Well, right out of the gate, I realize I say that a lot, but it's sort of appropriate. So
yeah.
I have an ever-growing frustration with my workplace, and this past week has been no different. Except this time.
Let me.
Oh, yeah.
No, go ahead. I was going to say, let me add that this is never, or this isn't like anything new for you. This is like old news, if I remember correctly.
Yeah,
I would say probably like 9 out of 10 of your jobs you've had are, wah, wah, wow, like you did before. So I'm sorry, continue. Go ahead.
I mean, it's definitely old news, but this time I've got a little painful souvenir for my disgruntlement, if that's even a word. Yeah, it's just been going downhill. I've been working at this place for just under 2 years. I think next month or maybe the beginning of April will be 2 years. And yeah, it's been a steady decline the whole time. It's just making me sad to work in food service, or what other fancy name you'd like to slap on it, the culinary industry, the service industry, blah, blah, blah. I really, really enjoy cooking. I respect cooking as a specialized technical trade, if not even an art form. But to do that for a living, as a means to pay your bills and stuff, it's a different story than, what I guess Food Network makes it out to be most of the time, or, movies and what have you. There's a lot of crap that goes on behind the scenes that shouldn't, and that certainly isn't, professional in a lot of these places, especially in my experience when there's like a bar attached to this restaurant, or, I mean, the one I work in, nobody wants to admit it, but it's a bar first. It's primarily there to sell booze, The food, while they try to put this public face on it that makes everybody believe that it's this like gourmet experience, it's really, the food there is really an afterthought. And I don't know, maybe because of that, or just because of the nature of the people who run it, there's a lot of like shortcuts taken. They play real fast and loose with things like sanitation guidelines and health code requirements and good old-fashioned labor laws, which my most recent experience will kind of attest to. There on Sunday, one of the owners decided to get rid of our normal floor cleaning crew, and that's something else that this place does different and kind of weird than other places I've seen. They don't clean at the end of the night. They, like, everything's a disaster when they close at night, and they'll have people come in the next morning to clean up from the night before. So, like, when you close at the end of the night, there's just, like, napkins and straw wrappers and whatever the hell you can think of all over the floor and whatever. So it's just weird, like, locking up and leaving it like that. But anyway, so the regular floor people, I don't know, like, didn't miss, like, a couple of salty footprints from when people coming in off the sidewalk. and one of the owners flipped out and fired him, and I guess he thought he could save money by having one of our dishwashers also be the floor guy. Now, this guy is absolutely incompetent to start with. Like, he's barely hanging on as a dishwasher, let alone the guy who's responsible for cleaning your entire business before it's acceptable to open to the public every day. So anyway, this guy was downstairs in our kitchen that we use to prep, all the food for every day that we're not even really supposed to be using. So, like, the drain down there had backed up or something, and water was kind of spilling all over the floor. So instead of, like, he just, like, squeegeed the floor off and just left it. Like, he didn't mop it and then, like, dry it off or anything. He just, like, pushed the water out of the kitchen and just left it basically a soaking wet mess. And a little bit of backstory here is I normally wear non-slip shoes to work, but my current non-slip shoes are extremely beat up, and they have been, like, destroying my ankle. So I haven't been able to wear them in a couple days just to, like, let my ankle heal. And, I can't really afford to go out and get new ones right at the moment. They're like another $90 a pair. But whatever. I mean, obviously there's other cheaper ones, but these kind of fit my needs otherwise. So anyway, I've been wearing, like, my normal old sneakers. And of course, the day I do that is the day this idiot has water all over the floor. And I was coming back out of there to go back upstairs with, carrying a bucket of something, and my feet just came right out from under me, like full on cartoon style, up in the air. And I spread my hands out behind me to try to take the impact. And I guess I landed more on my right side than anything else. So, it knocked everything out of me. I, like, couldn't even get up for a couple minutes. I just laid in the wet mess, like, trying to be like, what the fuck just happened? Then when I got up, like, I thought I was gonna puke. Like, for some reason I just felt nauseous and, like, hot-headed and shit. So I just had to sit downstairs and just, like, kind of let it pass. But you don't realize, of course, how badly injured you are when stuff like that's going on, like when the shock is setting in or whatever. So after a few minutes, I noticed that I had a pretty good-sized gash on my right arm. You could tell there was a big old goose egg by my elbow. I jammed my right thumb and the pinky and ring finger on that hand. My hip got a nice big bruise on it from, I guess, taking the lower impact of it. So between my ankle being chewed up from my goddamn shoes and then having that happen, I'm kind of a mess right now. And like I was telling you before we started recording, I can't even close my right hand. Like, so I'm right-handed, and obviously that sort of makes, holding a pan to saute food or holding a spatula or tongs or what have you, like, it sort of makes that difficult to impossible when you can't close your hand on it. So the cleaner guy decided that he was just going to, like, try to do everything he could to make sure everybody knew that he wasn't responsible, or, even though it was blatantly his fault. Granted, my shoes are inappropriate, but like I said, he didn't mop it, he didn't dry it, he didn't even have the wet floor sign up, which you're required to do. So, yeah. And I wasn't looking to, like, make his life hell over it or anything. Like, an hour later, he comes up to me and he goes, "Oh, so how you doing? You feel any better?" I go, "Not really. I can't really use my right hand." And he just, like, lost his mind. He's like, "Well, I told you that. It's not my fault." He's, like, Haitian or something, so he kind of speaks weird. It's hard to understand him anyway. And then when he's, like, ranting and raving, it's even more impossible. So I was like, "Dude, you asked me how I was. Did you want me to lie to you and say I could just run out and do cartwheels? All I did was tell you that I'm not great." And then he goes, "Oh, I'm going to get, Tony is our boss's name. I'm going to go get him. I'm not going to have you, like, blaming me for this or whatever." Like, I was like, "Okay, go get him." So he came in and I was like, I don't know what he's flipping out about. He just asked me how I was and I told him straight up. He goes, "Well, I think he's just, he wants to make sure that he's like from a Sioux happy area or something like that. And he wants to make sure like all the fingers aren't pointed just at him or whatever. I go, I can't even lift my arm to point my finger at him. But so it was chaos for a while. And then when I talked to Tony myself one-on-one about it, I mean, he didn't even. It's just crazy. Like, there's no such thing as an accident report there. There's no such thing as like going to the hospital or to check it out. He looked at me and he goes, "Just go slower." He's like, "All you got to do is slow down." I'm like, "What planet am I on?" That's what you say. You don't say like, "Did you get hurt? How bad is it? Are you all right? Like, what do you need? Blah blah blah. How did it happen?" You say, "Slow down, bud." I don't know. It's just mind-boggling. So yeah, I'm kind of keeping a mental checklist of all these fun little occurrences to sort of build my case for when I get ready to, I don't know, storm out of there in a blaze of glory, I guess. I don't know. But it's getting harder to go back every day.
Well, it's funny because you're saying about the incident report. I mean, I work in corporate America, and as soon as someone falls down or like bumps your knee or you staple your finger in your stapler, like you got to fill out an incident report, and it's just like
exactly that's how it's supposed to be.
I mean, obviously, you're working in a restaurant, in a bar, there's not really like kind of like corporate structure. Not that that's a good thing or a bad thing. I mean, there's the downfalls of working for a corporation as much as there are working for a corporation. But anything like that. I mean, I know. One of our mutual friends had carpal tunnel syndrome that she needed surgery on a couple months ago, and there's no doubt that it's because she worked in an office. I mean, there's certain protections there even for the worker, even though you got to jump through hoops to get your workers' comp approved and stuff like that. But yeah, that's just I don't know, man. I just like run away. I mean, you got a guy that's like, "How are you feeling?" And you're like, "Well, you basically injured me." It's like, "Oh, it's not my fault." And then well, it sort of is. I mean, I could make a big deal about it if you want. I'm obviously not. So just chill out, man. But I don't know, man. You have this awful string of just working at like shit jobs. I mean, it's not like. It doesn't start out that way either. Because I remember when you got this job, you were talking about how kind of cool and almost perky. I mean, perky as in like there were perks to it. Right. And now you're at this point where it's like, yeah, let's just cover up this terrible injury that you have. I mean, you don't even know what it is. I mean, you haven't been to a doctor yet. I mean, do you have health insurance through your job?
Nope.
Of course not. Of course you don't, because it's whatever.
No, not even anything close to it. I mean, I could go on and on about all the violations that happen on a daily basis at this lovely establishment. But I think I've proved my point that it's not an ideal place to be. Yeah. It's just, I don't know. For right now, I'm kind of stuck in a rock and a hard place. And, I don't know, short of just pulling up stakes again and diving into another town or something, I don't see myself really getting out of it in the too near future. So I guess, got to make the best of it while I have to be there. The part that, like, I don't know, to add insult to injury, literally, that is really getting me, well, I guess grinding my gears, to quote Peter Griffin today, is like, it was no secret that I was pretty badly hurt. And then I worked again the next day on Monday, and first thing the owner does is ask me, how you feeling today? And I just told him straight up, look, man, I'm sore as fuck. Like, I still can't use my hand. It's it's not like I don't need to be hospitalized or anything, but it's not fun. And it's the specific functions of my job are pretty severely impeded. So he's like, "Oh, just I'll give you a leave and you'll be good in half an hour." Okay, whatever. So all I was doing was looking forward to yesterday and today, which are my 2 days off. It's Tuesday and Wednesday are my weekends. And I'm thinking, okay, well, this happened close enough to my days off where, I at least have these 2 days where I don't have to do anything and, kind of aggravate it. And he's tried to get me to come into work both yesterday and today. knowing full well that like I'm fucked up. And I'm just like, I had to tell him yesterday. Yeah, I go, I'll come in if there's absolutely nobody else who can come in to help out. Like if you're really in that bad of a bind, but I prefer not to because I'd like to take these 2 days to let my body kind of try to heal up a little bit. He's like, oh, okay, yeah, rest up. And then today, sure enough, phone's ringing again. He flat out, then he texted me because I didn't answer the phone. He texted me, hey, call me back when you can. Don't worry, I don't need you to come in tonight. So I just ignored it. And then another coworker texted me to get a hold of this other guy who works in the kitchen who's like, he used to be the manager or whatever. It's a long story. But anyway, so I get a hold of that guy, and he goes, oh, yeah, we were just wondering if you could come in for a couple hours today. I'm like, what? He flat out told me that he's not calling me to have me come in. So obviously that was a lie. It's just, I don't know. It's just the shadiest place on earth, honestly. It's really
that's what it sounds like. There's just no oversight. Like he doesn't have to go up the ladder to anybody else. Like right. He's it, and even him is kind of at a low level because you're at like a bar restaurant thing. I mean, it's not even like a chain.
No.
Where there's like a regional person and then like a corporate. You know what I mean? It's like no, it's him. Of course, it's gonna be shady. I kind of feel like all these places in Cortland that you've worked at. I kind of feel like Cortland is just this like forgotten black hole or abyss of a town that like no one thinks either which way about it. Like if you went to like a lawyer and was like, hey, let's sue this place because of all these violations of labor law and blah blah blah, they'll be like, it's Cortland. I just kind of feel like you'd never get anywhere with it, And that's probably not what would happen. I mean, if you went like maybe if you called like a lawyer like out where I live or something like that, and they looked into it, I mean, it might be a little bit of a different situation because there's no like hometown roots to tie each other together. Where it's like, oh yeah, I know him. I'm not gonna take your case and sue my friend. You're stupid. I mean, it's not.
Right.
I just kind of feel like you wouldn't get anywhere. And it's really sad. That place is like subjecting you to this too. It's like no problem, don't come in and recuperate. You know what? You shouldn't even have asked me. Like any reasonable person would have told me to just I know you got hurt really bad. Here's like $500 under the table, and then just go home and rest for 3 days. Or something. I mean, I don't want him to like pay you off or something like that. Like, but yeah, my point is it's ridiculous. Like you never get anywhere. And that's the thing. If you wanted to hire like a lawyer and like go after these people, it's going to take considerable amount of money on your part
for sure
to do it too. I mean, I guess like you could find a lawyer that's going to like, oh, well, don't pay me unless we win. Then he'll like review your case and then he'll take it because he knows he's going to get money or he won't, I don't know, but it's just ridiculous. I mean, that whole crap with that printing place you worked at too, where you had to go in at all hours of the night and print Super Bowl t-shirts, which is completely, whatever.
That's fun. Yeah.
It's ridiculousness.
It's basically any small business owner in Cortland. They're a country, a nation, if you will, unto themselves. And, just given any length of time, they turn into kind of a tyrannical nation,
Yeah.
Because they're only answering to themselves. And, I mean, that scenario, here's a couple $100 under the table scenario, isn't too far from how things operate there anyway. So yeah, like you said, there's good and bad to corporate and non-corporate places, but honestly, like I'll take the protections of the corporate world any day over whatever perceived benefits come with a small business when you're basically left to yourself to fend against the owner when something shitty happens. So
yeah, I mean, in not only is it just like tyrannical bar owners. I mean, it's like you're rampant with like slumlords and under the table drug problems that no one wants to talk about or try to help or try to fix. It's ridiculous. And like I mean that like my where my parents work. I mean, it's a hospital, so it's like there's a level of bureaucracy in that where it's like you don't deal with that kind of stuff.
Right.
And even like, I mean, even if you worked at one of the chain stores, that's still a part of a bigger, cog of like corporate America. I mean, there's still somewhat protection there, but it's just like, yeah, I guess, like, if anybody could take anything out of this, it's like, work at places like this at your own risk. I mean, because that's basically what you're putting yourself through now. I mean, your health is at risk at this point. So.
Absolutely. And some of the slumlords and everybody that you're mentioning, bar owners, slumlords, some of those are the same people.
Yeah.
Wink, wink. But yeah, so that's where I stand in my lovely work life at the moment.
I think if all else fails, we could just become a couple of muckrakers, to use a term from your history books, and just like weed out this corruption and ridiculousness in our once beloved hometown.
Yeah, I think those days are long gone. Any hope of restoring it to any kind of glory.
This isn't 1985, 2015, so left behind. All right, then. Well, that stinks. I can tell you on my end, no one has shit all over the toilets in a few weeks, so that's pretty good.
That sounds like forward progress to me.
Yeah. It's funny because I think they actually hired a couple of new people that are like different, like cleaning crew people, and this one dude, I mean, I ran into him every time I went to the bathroom today, so I mean, he's cleaning the crap out of that thing, which is awesome. That makes me feel good.
No pun intended.
Like if I have to take a dump at work now, like I'm like, oh man, he probably cleaned this 5 minutes ago. I'm good. I don't like worry about it. So
I wonder if your place hired the people that my place fired.
I don't know. Actually, it's weird that we were talking about this because the one guy actually was a property manager at this place one of my friends that's in training with me right now lived at. So I'm like, wow, so you went from being a slumlord to cleaning toilets. I'm like, I don't wonder what happened on that end, but it's kind of weird how this is all fitting together. But he actually seems like he's a pretty nice guy. He's like always says hello.
Yeah. I'm sure he's super nice now. He's all humble. He's got to be cleaning toilets.
Well, speaking of that, the same friend I'm talking about, it's been like basically sub-zero temperatures around here, and I guess at her apartment, basically it's like a big house that's like sectioned off into. I mean, you're aware of what apartments like that are. She lived in one. I like to call the place she lived in the gray stucco place or whatever, where the ceiling collapsed. It's basically a big house like that that's like sectioned off into apartments, and I guess like the pipes froze on the washer and dry. Well, not the dryer, but on the washer, and called the landlords like, oh, well, you know what, that's a luxury, so we're not going to worry about it right now. I'm like, really? So you want me to, this isn't me, this is my friend, basically like, oh yeah, so I'll just drive 20 minutes to a laundromat and sit there for 3 hours and do my laundry, or you can fix the freaking washing machine, No, it's a luxury, so we're not going to worry about it right now. Like, are you joking?
Well, I hope she told them that however much of the rent covers that, having that in there is a luxury for them too, and she's not going to pay it until it's fixed.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is, these people that own her place are like a bunch of lawyers. So it's like you can't get nothing past these people. It's like, yeah, like hire a lawyer to fight a lawyer. That'll take forever.
Right.
You can't win. Little guy gets screwed every single day, and then we can just sit here and bitch and moan about it on our podcast and not do anything about it. We will do something about this, people. I'm pointing my finger at my camera. You can't see it, but I'm doing it.
Well, this podcast is step one. Hopefully, the idea, I guess, is to reach the masses through this method and inspire a growing rebellion of some sort.
Grassroots campaigns, that's how they get things done around here. Nice. So, move on to, we want to do the entertainment topic now.
Yeah, well, I mean, speaking of things that were better 30 years ago.
True. Very true. So we wanted to discuss the recent 40th anniversary of the Saturday Night Live television program on NBC. On Sunday, they had, this past Sunday, they had a 3.5-hour special in homage to their 40th anniversary. And it's kind of weird because they did it on a Sunday instead of a Saturday, which made no sense because, like, I've got to get up a little bit earlier for work, so I didn't really want to stay up until 11:30 watching it, but I kind of was sucked into it, so I did. The first thing I want to talk about with it, you sent me that link to that New York Times article, and as far as I'm concerned, that article can suck it in regards to their comment about Chevy Chase and Eddie Murphy, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But yeah, what they did was they just had a who's who of the show in the past come back, and they reenacted a lot of their original popular skits that they did. And I actually, for overall, I thought it was pretty enjoyable. I mean, it was really, it was kind of like almost surreal to like see all these things happening, and like all these people that came back and decided to portray a character that they did on the show. I mean, because like for a lot of these people, this show is like long past. I mean, Adam Sandler came back. He hasn't been on that show in like 15, 20 years almost now.
Right.
People like that. I mean, I'm not like a huge Adam Sandler fan by any means, but and of course, like, some of the original guys like Dan Aykroyd came back, and he did a Blues Brothers skit, kind of, or like not like a skit, but they were doing like a musical homage. Right. And Jim Belushi was there and did it with him, because I guess when they perform as the Blues Brothers, Jim Belushi does it with him now, and so obviously John Belushi's dead. So yeah, there was a lot of classic skits that they reenacted, and it was pretty enjoyable to watch. I mean, I'm not, and it's weird because I know that you're not really like a big fan of the show, and I never really was either. I mean, in its heyday, when it was at its best, I guess, like we weren't even really aware that it was on. I'm talking like, early to mid 80s, the beginning of the show in the 70s, which was 75, up to like the mid 80s, and then there was that kind of resurgence in the early 90s all the way up to the 2000s. I never really watched it. I don't know why, but we never did. Do you have any like skits that you remember that were memorable?
Yeah, well, I didn't. I missed it too. I didn't even know it was going on until I think maybe even like Saturday morning. Like VH1 was running like a special, like a retrospective of all the Saturday Night Live stuff. But
yeah.
And then when I realized what it was, I didn't understand that it was going to be on Sunday, so I didn't even like check for it. I thought I missed it on Saturday because I work late. And then I didn't even check for it on Sunday, and it turns out I could have watched it, but whatever. I had to like try to catch little clips on YouTube here and there. I don't really know. The only knowledge I have about the Chevy Chase Eddie Murphy thing is it comes from that article, so I don't know what really happened. But in terms of skits, like for me, Saturday Night Live is defined, and it will always be defined in my mind by, the Wayne's World era, like the Mike Myers, Dana Carvey, Phil Hartman, Chris Farley era. David Spade, Adam Sandler, all those guys were on there at that point. To me, that was what I remember. Like if we went over to my aunt's house, like my parents and them were always watching it while we were like in the other room playing and stuff. So that's the era I remember. That's the first taste I ever got of it. Like, not being in reruns and stuff. Yeah, I have a few favorite skits. I mean, I guess how can you not? Even if you're a casual fan, you must have at least one that you always crack up at. I don't know if you remember, but from the Chris Farley years, they had the Nerf crotch bat. I love that one.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just fake commercial with them hitting each other in the balls with a fucking foam bat. There was one. I'm not sure what era it's from, but there was one that was like a adult diaper parody called "Oops, I Crapped My Pants."
Yeah,
that was great. Phil Hartman was in one called Super Colon Blow. I don't know, that was silly, but it was hilarious.
Yeah, they actually ran a clip of that.
Oh, did they?
Obviously, because Phil Hartman's dead, they can't really.
Right.
A lot of the characters, they either they showed clips of them in some of their most famous clips, and of course they showed the colon blow. And they actually had some current actors like reenact some of their favorite characters, but they went into character and did it, which actually wasn't as terrible as I thought it would be. But yeah, they did show a lot of those things, and they reenacted a lot of them. For once, or at the end, or near the end of the show, they actually did have Mike Myers and Dana Carvey redo Wayne's World, and it was like the top 10 things about Saturday Night Live or something like that. And they did their catchphrases and they did the obligatory things they were supposed to. I thought Dana Carvey was a little bit funnier than Mike Myers. I was actually surprised that Mike Myers agreed to come back and do it, because from what I've read and heard about him as an actor is that he's a very difficult actor to work with, just by accounts of him throwing temper tantrums on the set about things he didn't like and locking himself in his trailer. And I know, for instance, when they were filming or doing the voiceover for Shrek, he did half of the first movie in an English accent, and then just out of nowhere started doing a Scottish accent and said that it sounded better. And the producers were like, "Well, you just recorded half this movie as an English accent, like." We don't want to spend the money to go over and do it again. And like, he refused to do it unless they let him re-record it in the Scottish accent. So, he kind of seems like he's very demanding. And, I don't know how he is as a person. I mean, this might just be professional Mike Myers, but I was surprised, and that's just like the cynical side of me thinking, oh, he wouldn't do that, but he did.
Well, it is. I've actually just happened to read an article sort of relating to that, in a rather timely coincidence. You're not really wrong to think that. It's kind of legend at this point. It was well known that during the filming of the first Wayne's World movie, he got into it with the director, Penelope Spheris, because he had all these like editing cuts that he wanted made and things he wanted taken out or whatever. And I mean, it comes off like he was trying to play director, and she had already screened like her cut of it, and it tested well, so they went with it, and he got super pissed off. And turns out they didn't talk again until like 2012, when maybe even 2013, when there was like a big panel discussion for some entertainment function where they reunited everybody, and one of the producers had to like convince Mike Myers to bury the hatchet. Dana Carvey was also pissed off at him for a while, because it pretty much is believed that Dr. Evil is basically a Lorne Michaels impression, and apparently Dana Carvey was the one to come up with it first, so he thought basically Mike Myers stole it from him and used it in the Austin Powers movies and made millions of dollars without really, here you go, buddy. So I guess they all buried the hatchet now, and we're seeing the product of it.
Yeah, it was definitely cool, because that's, like you said, that's one of the iconic scenes, that I remember, because the movies too. And that's the thing, like, I didn't really discover any of these people until I saw these movies. Like, I didn't know Adam Sandler was on Saturday Night Live, but I started catching on to that stuff, like, because his first string of movies, like Billy Madison and Happy Gilmore, when all those started coming out, they were like, oh, well, he's an SNL alum, and it's like, well, what's that? I mean, I've heard of it, but never really watched it. And of course, when those guys left, after that, it was like the Will Ferrell, Sherry O'Terry, that era, like, who played Mary Catherine Gallagher? Why did I forget that? Like, and she was on it, and they did that too. But yeah, they did a lot. I'm about to talk about a couple more of the skits that, like, they redid Celebrity Jeopardy with Will Ferrell, and Daryl Hammond came back to play Sean Connery, and Norm Macdonald did the Burt Reynolds / Turd Ferguson character, so that was pretty funny. They actually did the Weekend Update. This was like a big string of things. They actually had Tina Fey, Amy Poehler, and Jane Curtin being the newscasters. And Jane Curtin made a couple of snide remarks that I liked. She was talking about how she used to be the only pretty blonde that read the fake news, and now there's like a whole network devoted to that, and it popped up with the Fox News logo, and I was like, ah ha ha ha. And of course, like, every news outlet ran that, but of course, when Fox News did their take on Saturday Night Live 40th anniversary, they didn't mention a thing about it, of course. And it was funny because there's like, she's like, and they even still managed to show more cleavage than I do, and they showed that skit where she had like opened her shirt, with her bra on or whatever, and they showed a picture of, like, I think it was Megyn Kelly, one of the anchors there, where just, it was like ridiculous. But in that, going along with that scene, this kind of leads up to the Chevy Chase thing as well. But before that, they had a couple of actors come out and do some of their favorite characters. So Emma Stone did an impersonation of that Gilda Radner character that would read like letters on the Weekend Update with the big poofy black hair. It wasn't really that funny. Her impersonation was pretty good. And our good old friend Melissa McCarthy came out and did the Van Down by the River scene, which she actually did pretty well. And like I said, maybe it's because of my, because I like her style of comedy. She did it pretty decent. I mean, without stealing the character completely away and just impersonating it. I mean, she kind of put her own little take on it, but I thought she did pretty well. But anyway, that led up to a couple of the other anchors like Norm Macdonald and Seth Meyers had a few words to say, and they introduced Chevy Chase. And this goes into my article about how he wasn't funny. Or I'm sorry, the article I read in the New York Times that said he wasn't funny, and I'm kind of like, just get off the guy's back. I mean, have you seen Chevy Chase lately?
Yeah.
He is not looking very well. He has put on a ton of weight. I mean, I'm not saying this is is an insult or anything, but he's very overweight. He's in his 70s. When he came out, he was talking, and you could kind of tell he was having trouble speaking. And that's what kind of happens as you get older. It's just, and you start getting older and in poor health. He just kind of felt like he couldn't speak very well. And they said something about how he wasn't funny. I'm like, kind of lay off. I don't really think the guy can really be who he used to be in that medium anymore. Right. Because he can't do it. He's old, and he's out of shape, and it looks like he's in pretty poor health. And they made some kind of comment about Eddie Murphy being incredibly awkward and not funny, because it's like the first time he's been back on the show since the mid 80s. And they were making it to be like this huge deal that he came back. I'm like, the guy honestly has moved on and done other things. And he came back, and he came out and said like a minute or two monologue. And it wasn't funny, but did it have to be funny? Like, I don't think it had to be funny. He just came back, and it was just amazing seeing him there on the set, I guess, is what they were going for. Yeah. And to be honest with you, I thought his interview on the red carpet special before that was way more awkward than his monologue. Like, he was out there, and like Al Roker was interviewing him, and it was just this terribly painful conversation. And for some reason they had the Today Show people doing the red carpet special, and I can't stand them. It's like Matt Lauer and Savannah Guthrie and all them, and I'm just like,
NBC cross promotion is all that is.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I would have preferred freaking Carson Daly interviewing everybody over Matt Lauer, and like, I mean, Matt Lauer just rubs me the wrong way. I mean, he's supposedly a liberal journalist, but he just, I kind of feel like a lot of times he specifically asks people questions that they have told him not to, or about things they obviously don't want to talk about. I think he presses a little bit too hard on people as a journalist. And for the sake of what, you're on a morning talk show, like, you don't need to be this breaking news,
he's
person or whatever anymore. But
he's probably the most frustrated, failed primetime anchor of all time.
Yeah, I would say so. And like I said, nothing against him as a person, but like professionally, like, I'm not a fan of him at all. But anyway, I thought that was more awkward than the monologue. So I'm kind of like, everybody just kind of lay off of these people. It's like they don't have to be funny every second of the day. And it's just like, whatever. I was kind of sick of reading stuff about it. And like, when I sat there listening to the Eddie Murphy monologue, I was like, yeah, this isn't funny, but like, I'm not disappointed that he's not being funny. Like he said, it was like, coming back to a high school reunion. I mean, we know what going back to a high school reunion looks like. It's 99% bullshit. Like, what the hell am I doing here? So I whatever. I say leave the man alone. I mean, he's a successful comedian and Hollywood actor, and he's richer than anything. So just like, who cares? He doesn't care anymore. I mean,
let's be honest. The only reason there was any major deal made out of his involvement is the fact that he became such a high-profile celebrity after he left the show. If he had like just like an average career or whatever, they wouldn't even have given a shit. Probably wouldn't even have sought him out. Yeah. But because he was Eddie Murphy for the better part of the 80s and 90s, it's like this big deal to get him back. When that's exactly right. I mean, sure, it's not like he went unnoticed when he was on Saturday Night Live. He did a few characters. He had the buckwheat parody and the Mr. Rogers parody and the goofy James Brown impression he used to do. But he wasn't really on there for a tremendous length of time anyway. And none of those characters are like these legendary history-making characters that shaped Saturday Night Live, in my opinion anyway. So I think he's got room to I don't know, not really try to break his back to, make everybody laugh the whole time. I mean, I don't know. I think that's annoying too. I agree with you on that. To like try to, for me, it's good enough that he agreed to do it, because that's a minor miracle in itself. Let's be honest.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in some of the things that they decided to do as like their skits that they did over or did again, like I kind of question, like they, of course, like I guess I'm gonna have to eat my words about Kristen Wiig, but they did like 2 or 3 skits with her like right off the bat.
Yeah.
One of them I didn't really like was this. They did this thing about the Californians. I'm not sure if you've seen this skit before, but it's basically just a bunch of people acting like airheads in California. And they used like some of the famous people that were there. They used was Taylor Swift and Bradley Cooper. Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I can't really make a comment on her intelligence or not, but
I will.
Well, if you want, that's fine. I'll tell you, she's like apparently in the celebrity circle, she's like one of the celebrities you don't want to piss off for some reason because she has so many people like on her side. I don't know. Fortunately, we're not there, so we can say whatever we want to. But yeah, that was like one of the skits. I was like, yeah, whatever. And yeah, but overall, I thought it was pretty decent. They did like a clip show of like their famous digital shorts, and like Andy Samberg and Adam Sandler recorded one, and basically the gist of it was they called it like When You Break or something like that, and it was showing them like cracking up on live TV, like they couldn't keep a straight face. And they did make a comment on how like Jimmy Fallon would always do it with like Horatio Sands whenever they were in a skit together. They could never keep a straight face, and they were making fun of that, which is pretty cool. I actually missed Jimmy Fallon on it. I know that you're not really a big fan of him, but he in the beginning, him and Justin Timberlake did a musical number, but I can't remember what I was doing, but I missed like the first 15 minutes of the show for some reason. So I missed it, so I'm like, whatever. But yeah, like overall, I thought it was actually a well-deserved reunion, a pretty good program overall. But yeah, of course, we can nitpick it all day, and I'm not going to analyze every single skit in it.
Yeah.
Bill Murray made an appearance on it too. I know that he's become kind of crotchety in his later years too, but he came back and he sang a song during with actually Paul Schaefer.
Yeah,
Letterman show. He was doing the keyboards for it. So yeah, that's pretty cool. And they had like Adam Sandler come out and play opera guy for a little bit, and he sang something. And so it was pretty neat just to see like which characters they decided to pick and throw back up there. It was pretty cool. So
no, that was
that's my take.
That was my first thought when I saw. I didn't see the actual Bill Murray like performance or anything, but I did see a picture with Paul Schaefer, playing the keyboard or whatever. And that was my first thought. Was like, wow, that's the first time. I'm pretty sure that's the first time Paul Schaefer's been on NBC since 1993. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I was gonna say because that's when Letterman switched over to CBS, right? So yeah, it was pretty neat. And actually, it was funny because along with Bill Murray, this is kind of a little bit off topic, but we're finishing up Parks and Recreation. We've been watching back episodes of that, and they're actually in their farewell season. He actually did a cameo as the mayor of Pawnee on the last episode we watched, so that was pretty neat. He actually died. So basically his character, he was laying in a coffin, and then they had like a video will or something they showed of him, and he was talking on it for a couple minutes. So it was pretty neat to see him just pop up in random places too. And he just did that movie with Melissa McCarthy. It was St. Vincent.
Yeah.
He actually did. Have you seen the movie Grand Budapest Hotel?
Yes, it's fucking awesome.
That was a good movie, wasn't it? I really like Ray Fiennes for some reason. I don't know. I'm just. But yeah, he did that little bit part in that too. That was a pretty decent flick. Definitely along the lines of Wes Anderson. So
I was never really a Wes Anderson fan. The only other one before that I saw was I went to the theater to see Moonrise Kingdom. It was alright. But I just rented the Grand Budapest Hotel to see what all the praise was about, just to, give it a shot. And I was fucking blown away. That movie is fantastic.
It's so simple, and I kind of put that in the category of it's not like a complex, ridiculous visual. There are really good visuals in that movie, but it's just a very simple movie, and simple movies work. They work so much better than all this CGI crap that we talk about. I mean, like years ago, they were always talking about, Avatar is going to win Best Picture, but The Hurt Locker won instead. It was a woman director directing a war movie with like no special effects, and it was great that something like that won. I'm not saying that I think the content of that, whatever, we're not going to comment on.
No, I agree. I know what you're saying. I agree.
Yeah, like I like that it was a simple movie, and that stuff still works. So
yeah,
cool beans. So yeah, if you want to catch any clips of the 40th anniversary of Saturday Night Live, I would suggest doing so if you wanted to see some of that. Maybe just even to watch the Wayne's World skit again. That was right at the end. Yep. Good stuff.
Well, I'm struggling to come up with as I usually do, with a clever segue about, I don't know, from a star-studded event to a lack of stars.
Yes, that's good. See, we should work on segues before we start recording. So, like, we'll hold up a little card on the camera, and you'd be like, do the segue right now. It's perfect or something. Yeah, so I'll introduce it. You can talk about what you know about it. Came across an interesting article on Upworthy.com last week about how I'm not sure if we can really verify the number, but they said about 99% of at least the people that live in our country never really see the night sky as it truly should be seen. If you want to care to explain, please.
I mean, I've heard basically some version or another of that for years and years now, and I can't say I disagree. I don't know that it's something that is open to be agreed with or disagreed with. I mean, it's true. Yeah. Like, there's a shit ton of man-made light, on this planet now, and certainly in most, areas that are considered civilized, you're not really going to be able to see, I guess, an ideal viewing of what the night sky truly looks like, away from all that. I know that there's the organization called the Dark Sky Association that you told me about. I don't know really too much about them, or if they're kind of self-proclaimed, but I guess they're perceived as like the authority on the best places on the planet to view the true night sky and things like that.
Well, they also, they work. If they get enough like support in a community, they'll work with them on how to cut down on what they call light pollution.
Right.
An example is if you go to like a parking lot of, like, say, a department store or something, how the parking lots are always lit. A good majority of that light coming from a light bulb in the park. I mean, there's such big light bulbs they suck so much power. But when that light is like projected out of it, it kind of a lot of it just disperses off into nowhere, and it's not an efficient use of light. And one example that they use is like they start in some of these communities, they'll replace their street lamps with actual like LED lights, because LED lights are meant to concentrate the light beam into a specific area. Yeah. So like when they put these light beams in the street lamps, they shine down in whatever angle they need it to shine down, so you can see the road, and like that light doesn't get wasted, like the extra light that's coming out of the light bulb, because it's a focused beam. It's not just like an incandescent light bulb that you stick in your lamp where the light just goes everywhere. That's what they use in these things like parking lots, and so that's kind of like what part of their initiative is. And yeah, I'm not sure what they're really the authority on. I mean, I was just reading through their website. I believe it's darksky.org. If anybody's interested in looking at it. But yeah, it's kind of a shame. It's one of those things that, you think about it, just like when we were like in the Revolutionary War days, like in the 1700s, 1800s, before electricity was a prevalent thing in our society. I mean, if you lived somewhere, you would always see the night sky. There was no such thing as like a waste light pollution or a waste of light, because we didn't even have it yet. It was from candles. So yeah, it's kind of terrible to think about. I mean, honestly, in the grand scheme of things, when we talk about like what's important in our lives nowadays, okay, seeing the night sky as it should be isn't really on the top of your list. But when you think about it, it is kind of sad and depressing.
Yeah, well, they make valid points on their site about the effects of it, and why it's a legitimate issue. They mention that it threatens. I mean, again, maybe this one is a little more frivolous, but it threatens astronomy. It disrupts ecosystems, and it affects human circadian rhythms, which regulates your sleep patterns and everything. And it also says it wastes like $2.2 billion per year of energy in America alone. So, I mean, it's not all silly or anything to sneeze at. I will say that I get and I understand the points about LED light, but I hate LED light. I fucking do. Like, I hate it in headlights. I hate it in Christmas lights. It's just so gross and artificial. It just.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe because I was raised with the incandescent stuff and the orangey glow or whatever, but I don't know. LED light just it like bums me out. It messes up my I don't know, happiness level or something. It just seems so like plastic and fake.
Well, you know what it is too, because they use them in headlights. I mean, headlights and cars aren't pointed directly out at a 90-degree angle from the car. They're basically they're kind of like moved so they're down and towards your lane, so that it's not like straight out at you. But like the LEDs, like I said, they're concentrated beams. So whenever I look at one of those things, I'm like,
yeah,
like,
it's horribly bright,
really bright, and it's like, I mean, it's not really. I mean, that's the problem, because it's not, because like even on car headlights, when that light comes out, yeah, at first, it's kind of like a burst of light in your face, but when you think about it, it kind of like spreads out, not all of it, or like the majority of it does go where it's supposed to do, because you're talking about a car that's on the ground, close to the ground, but see, that's why it doesn't seem that's what, like I was saying, it's not as concentrated, so it doesn't seem like it's right in your face all the time, unless like, the car is higher up or whatever the case may be. But yeah, you're right. The LEDs, they do, to me, they're very artificial. I don't really care about LED Christmas lights, but yeah, I'm more of not a fan of the LED headlights on a car. They're just really annoying.
Yeah. I don't know, just like when you bring it into your home, it starts to feel a little too much like fluorescent lighting, which reminds me too much of like non-homey conditions, and just puts me on edge, I guess.
Yeah, fluorescent lights remind me mostly of boot camp, and that's definitely not a place I like to go back to. So
rightfully so.
But ironically, being in the Navy did actually afford me an opportunity to see the night sky as it's supposed to be seen. When I was out on an aircraft carrier, we were crossing the ocean.
Right.
At nighttime, they don't have. They have just like it's kind of like an airplane. They have running lights so that if you're in the water, you can see it. But they're not like these crazy, floodlights or anything like that. So I remember numerous times, because I used to smoke when I was in the Navy. I'd go out and smoke, or just for the heck of it, I'd go out and look up, and it was just amazing. The difference is, it's a marked difference. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah.
And I don't know how you can really ever get the opportunity to do that unless you go, up into the middle of nowhere, like go hiking in the Maine woods or something like that, where there's no civilization. But actually, my dad mentioned that too. They went on a cruise probably like 10 years ago, and he, fortunately he got to see the same thing, out in the middle of the ocean, and go out on deck, and you can look up, and it's like, whoa. I mean, you'd just be surprised like what you don't see.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many, and there's billions of stars that we can see. From Earth, and like, you go outside right now and try to look at them. Well, you're probably on Main Street, so you wouldn't even see anything. No. But even out here, where I live, I mean, you kind of know I'm not really near a major metropolitan center. When I'm within a couple miles anyway, if you look out the sky here, you can see a lot more than what you see where you are, but you still don't get the full effect of it, because I can even see the orange glow probably from like Saratoga or something that's like kind of down across the lake over there. I mean, I can see an orange glow coming up. I think there's a factory over there somewhere too. So it's like, like what the hell, But yeah, it's pretty interesting if anybody's interested in going to look at that. And I definitely would encourage you, if you get the chance, to try to go to a place where you could see it, because you'd be just shocked at how different it is. So
yeah, I think the last time I can remember seeing. Yeah. I feel like I've seen it here around this area, maybe out camping, or not full on, but something close to it. But the last time I can remember really truly getting to see it was in 2011, around late 2011. I went to Kentucky, and my girlfriend at the time, and her family has a house literally in the middle of nowhere, and it's just sky as far as you can see. So yeah, that's pretty awesome. But yeah, you really have to get quite a ways out from any kind of like major, I guess metropolitan area or whatever. Even though obviously Cortland isn't that, but it does have enough random light pollution to block out most of the splendor, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. That's a good word to describe it, the splendor. we don't use that word at all ever. So splendor is a good one. See, I told you were a linguistic master. It's all good.
Well, I'll take it.
All right, then. So that's that talk. Good talk.
Okay.
So, yeah, go check them out, darksky.org. I'm giving them some free advertising here to the 30 or 40 of you that listen to our show.
Soon to be 45, at least.
Yeah, speaking of people listening to things, yeah, that segue sucked because that doesn't really fit. But I was listening to something online the other day. Well, of course, we have to get into the depressing topics of our terrible world and all the dumb shit that's going on with that.
Because it just doesn't fucking end.
Yeah, it doesn't end. I mean, there's just crap going on today that I was listening to at work while I was studying, and I was just getting a headache from listening to all this crap. Because they were, it was something about like the Egyptians bombing Libya because ISIS like beheaded a bunch of Egyptian Christians in Libya. Now Egypt's mad and they're gonna bomb them too and whatever. We had some. I was actually listening. I was going through that website I look at sometimes, Addicting Info. I'm kind of getting a little bit away from Addicting Info. A lot of their, I mean, you would consider it like a liberal media site, but a lot of their stories are kind of like spinster stories, and I'm kind of catching on to it. It's really annoying.
Yeah.
Because it's giving liberal media a bad name. But they had like an article with a video clip in there. It was in regards to the three, and it's stupid that I even have to label it this way, but the 3 Muslims that were killed in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, by some random white dude. And I mean that it's like it's dumb that I have to say that they were 3 Muslims. I can't just say they were 3 people, because obviously them being Muslim is relevant to the story and it's relevant to the world because of all the stuff that's going on. And anyway, it had a clip of a friend of these 3 people that were killed on an interview with CNN, and basically he was saying that the media's got to stop dehumanizing Muslims, and it's really when I think about it, it's a really prevalent thing right now, and it's not just with like the media. I mean, it's like elected officials and everything. It's terrible. Anyway, the friend's name, his name was Shafi Khan, and I transcribed it as best as I could. So I'm just going to read, if you don't mind, what he said in the interview. He said, quote, speaking as an American Muslim, I can tell you we cannot deny that there's a sentiment in the community that we feel that we are being targeted for our faith. There is certain sections of the media and political apparatus that are constantly dehumanizing Muslims. And I want to take this minute and I want to ask people like Fox News and Bobby Jindal to stop the dehumanization of Muslims. It's really, really starting to take a toll. We had just last month an elected official named John Bennett, who's a state senator, said that Islam is a cancer that needs to be cut out of society. And the Republican Party establishment, instead of condemning him, they came out and made a point to say that we stand by him. These people need to reflect sincerely about what they're doing to the social cohesion of the country. Imagine if someone had said that about the Jewish community. And he has a very valid point. But let's kind of get into this a little bit. John Bennett is a state senator from the state of Oklahoma. And when I was initially researching this, I couldn't find a mention about his comment about Islam being a cancer to society. You did actually find where he said that, correct?
Yeah.
Did you happen to have what the quote was or where you found it right offhand?
Yeah, I found it on the New York Daily News website.
Okay.
That's literally, it just says that this is an article from September. It says that he is doubling down on racist remarks he made last week, and even upped his fiery rhetoric, saying that all American Muslims are a cancer in our nation that needs to be cut out.
Okay.
And it said he refused to apologize for it.
Yeah, when I was researching it, like I said, I couldn't find that specific quote, but I'm glad you did. I did find some other quotes. It was on a site called, I think it was called newsok.com. OK standing for Oklahoma. Basically, it's the online version of a paper called The Oklahomian. And there was some, I guess, less bad things that he said before that, but they were still pretty bad. The author of these articles is Rick Green, a staff member. Basically, this Representative Bennett posted on Facebook saying that people should be wary of those who say they are Muslim American, and to be especially wary if you're a Christian. He also quoted, it's kind of weird saying quoted as posting, but he posted that in the Quran it clearly states that non-Muslims should be killed. And of course, there's the Council on American Islamic Relations. Their shortened version is CAIR, CAIR. There's an Oklahoma chapter. Of course, they've been condemned. At the time, they were condemning these posts, and they were saying that the comments referring to the Quran were false, and the Republican Party leaders in the state should at least condemn these remarks. But instead of condemning them, like Mr. Khan was saying, he said that the Oklahoma's Republican Party chairman, Dave Weston, came out and was like saying that CAIR's argument was ingenuous at best, and that he stood by John Bennett. And he said that if, and I quote this too, if we Americans are ruled by Islam, then Christians and Jews like you and I only keep practicing our faith if we paid a protection tax. But if you're Christian or Jewish and don't immediately convert to Islam, they immediately decapitate you. This is proven by ongoing observations around the world today. I mean, like, can we really tolerate like an elected official saying crap like this? I mean, like, are we really at that point where people aren't calling these people out to like resign and just be? I mean, they're like openly racist to me. Right. You know what I mean? And like, obviously, religion isn't a race, so you're not. I mean, I guess using the word racist isn't really the best term to use, but I mean, it's just like open bigotry towards a religion, and like, I'm dumbfounded. And like, I mean, I haven't heard anything about these people being ousted from office. And I think because of what this that Shafi Khan was saying about how it's tearing at the social cohesion of our society, people like agree with these people that I'm flabbergasted. I'm having a hard time projecting what I'm thinking to you, but it's crazy. I can't believe it.
Well, this is essentially the crux of the argument that pretty well publicized argument that Ben Affleck had with Bill Maher. I was gonna say Bill Murray,
right?
On Real Time a couple months ago, and Bill Maher basically came off on the side of this John Bennett clown. So we have a well-known media figure, and one who is typically considered to be like super liberal, and I mean, in my opinion, Bill Maher gets a lot more credit for being that person than he actually is. But he's still identified that way in mainstream media. And so what you have is the appearance of people, basically a bipartisan agreement on this issue that Muslims are horrible. So it seems that way anyway. And I agree with Ben Affleck. He called it racist. He called it gross and disgusting, and it is. There's a billion things you could pick out of the Christian Bible that are horrific and disgusting as well. It works like that for all religion. The thing is, I'll never subscribe to the belief that it's okay to paint an entire group of people with one brush just because an amount of them act a certain way. I mean, how many Muslim, like, look into the background of the 3 Muslim students that this nutcase in North Carolina murdered. They were like dental students.
Right.
There's how many doctors, dentists, whatever, have you come across in this country that are, probably Muslim, that are just normal people trying to, make a living and take care of their families and do everything that we're all trying to do. To say that they're all inherently evil or bad because of some stupid bullshit in the Quran or because of some stupid bullshit that barbaric idiots in a third world country are perpetuating is, like you said, it's bigotry. There's no question about it.
Well, and the other problem along with it too isn't just like public officials saying stupid things. Like, let's go back to like you were saying, the Chapel Hill students. Yeah, I mean, they're people. They're not identified by like, you shouldn't be identified as a religion. Like, just like you shouldn't identify yourself by your job. That's like one of the first things people ask you when they don't know you. They're like, well, what do you do for a living? Like, that's a big part of who I am or something? Right. No, it's nothing to do with who I am. But the part of the problem isn't just these people making these comments. It's when, in this case, it took hours and hours before anybody or any major media outlet, and that's your first problem, major media outlet. Right. But it took hours for any of these like news cycle channels like CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, whatever, to even report on this. And even though I wouldn't want these people labeled as like I said before, like there are these 3 Muslim people that were killed. It's such a relevant topic to what's going on in our world that it should have been picked up a lot sooner than that too. So you have something where our media doesn't give any attention to violence towards Muslims in our own country, and they haven't even they won't even label this a hate crime.
Right.
Whoever labels things as hate crimes isn't going to label it as a hate crime, which is complete and utter bullshit. Like, you know that this backwoods asshole killed these people because they were Muslim for no reason whatsoever. Because, like you said, these people were, law-abiding citizens. The one was going to be they were in the medical field. I don't know if all 3 of them were. I know that the guy, the husband that was killed, like he said, is a dentist, and he was actually arranging some kind of relief effort to Syria because of the civil war going on there. I mean, he's a humanitarian. He's doing something good for the better of other people. And, and no one gave any coverage to this until it was like, it was more, there were more comments on Twitter at the time than there were on major media outlets, which is insane. But that's good, because Twitter is, like it or not, is a relevant medium to get news across and to comment about things, So fortunately, we had Twitter so that it broke sooner than it probably would have. I mean, you probably wouldn't have heard about this until like 3 days later if it wasn't for Twitter. And that's the other problem. Like, it's and that act in itself, to me, is dehumanizing this, because we're not giving it national media attention that it should be, because it's an obvious hate crime against people that practice a religion, that has nothing to do with anybody else, and they don't have anything to do with the horrible things that people are doing in the name of their religion. And it's sad. It's just very sad.
Well, let's be honest about why that is. I think it'd be foolish to try to ignore the fact that it's a white guy committing violence against brown people. If it were the other way around, especially Muslim brown people, it would have been picked up before the fucking gun was even cooled off,
Yeah, and they already would have been thrown out the term terrorist attack, terrorism, before it even before you even knew the background of it. And like, they didn't even. It's ridiculous because they won't label this as a domestic act of terrorism.
Nope.
Okay, it might not be quite like that, but it's more like a hate crime, which to me is the same thing. I mean, I don't care. You can argue. We can do wordplay all day if you want to,
right.
And if you can convince me that terrorism and a hate crime aren't the same thing, then by all means, go ahead. I'll listen to you. But it's like the attempted bombing of an NAACP chapter. I don't remember what state it was in, but remember they found a bomb outside of an NAACP regional headquarters somewhere a few weeks ago. It didn't go off. They won't call that terrorism.
Right.
Oklahoma City bombing. Okay, you're talking like early 90s when this happened. At first, it was a terrorist attack. When they found out it was Timothy McVeigh, an American citizen who was white, they didn't call it a terrorist attack anymore. Now, all these years later, we can say that's terrorism, that's what happened. But even at that point in time, they didn't call it a terrorist attack when they found out it was a white American citizen. It's
right.
like, this is ridiculous. Like, the word terrorism was like made up like in the 70s by a bunch of think tanks to explain what was going on. And it's not even like a real word, to be honest with you. And, it's funny because I'll keep going here for a minute. You were talking about how not painting people, like a certain few people. What am I trying to say? You know what I'm trying to say here.
Yeah, painting the entire population based on the actions of a segment of that population.
Correct. Having a little trouble because I'm getting a little upset. But and like you said, I mean, you can look at all the stuff in like the Christian Bible that's horrible. Just a couple weeks ago, like the president took flack from everybody because at the National Prayer Breakfast, he said that people should get off their high horse and stop painting a picture of Islam because of what a few people are doing. Look at what happened with people that were Christian. There were the Crusades. There was the Spanish Inquisition. There was slavery in America. And like everyone just gave him so much flack for that. Like, how could you possibly even compare the two and blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, like people in the Crusades that were supposedly Christian, like went to war and slaughtered a bunch of Muslims over in the name of their religion. The same thing with the Inquisition. People in this country tried to justify bringing slaves over from another country by like obscure passages in the Bible or just the fact that slavery was mentioned in the Bible. And like they did all these horrible things in the name of their religion, and we don't paint Christians as those type of people. Like, do you think that the Westboro Baptist Church, Baptist Church is obviously a Christian organization. Like these people, you don't paint everybody who's a Christian in the same light that you do the Westboro Baptist Church, do you? You don't, because it's Christianity. It's not a savage religion, blah blah blah, or whatever stupid title you want to put onto it.
Yeah.
So it's like he got so much flack for saying that. It's like, no, he's right. Like, it's so annoying, that people have this. I mean, and you don't even look at, and then all we are is looking at them in the Middle East. Like, look at all those countries in like Indonesia that their heads of state are Muslim. They're not a bunch of, they're not causing terrorist acts and stuff like that. Like this, like Al Qaeda or whoever, ISIS that's going on right now. It's just, it's pretty sad, that people can't even look at, and you have like no talent, ass clowns like Tucker Carlson, trying to like give, President Obama crap for saying that. And he's saying that like, oh, Christianity like eradicated slavery, blah, blah, blah. Like there is no slavery. Well, like, actually it didn't. And two, they estimate there's like 35 million people, still under slavery right now. And it's mostly in human trafficking and the sex trade. But anyway, all that stuff aside, it's, do you have any thoughts? Like, I'm just going to rant and let you say something. So,
well, I mean, ultimately it's all, they're all symptoms of and products of the same root causes, really. And you're really finally starting to see consistently the effects of the, I don't know, I guess if this is going to get into the conspiracy territory for some people, but you're starting to see the effects that the elite agenda to create a class of mindless consumer drones who fucking exist only to go to work to power the machines that make the rich richer and buy their products and let the fucking TV think for them. I mean, this is what's happening. There's an entire country of idiots who fucking don't have an original thought in their head, who let whatever their chosen, news station or sports team or whatever affiliation form all their opinions for them. I mean, these people en masse are just, I don't know, they like crave this whole, us or them mentality, whether it's Democrat or Republican, whether it's like whatever the fucking game is that week, our team or their team, whether it's Coke or Pepsi, whether it's fucking apparently Christian or Muslim, it goes on and on and on and on. But essentially that's what it boils down to. If you're not with us, you're against us. And that's what was so successfully exploited, going into the Iraq War under George Bush and every day since then.
Yeah. And it's funny that you mentioned that because, even lately as I've been getting more involved, not like involved, but more interested in these topics and, doing my own research and reading things, like I find it very difficult for me to have an original thought about it anymore either, because I didn't realize how much of a spell I was under with being told and what I hear is being the truth, and it's like really, and I'm starting to break out of that, which is good in my own mind, but still, I mean, I was watching like I'm sure you've heard of it. It's called Democracy Now. It was like an independent news station started by Amy Goodman. A really good program. I mean, it's an independent news source, so they don't get like corporate sponsorship. I mean, they're basically like broadcast on like NPR and PBS across the country. There was a video I was going to watch, and it was like, should the U.S. Arm Ukraine to fight against the rebels that are backed by Russia? And I sat there and I was looking at it, and I'm like, you know what? I'm having a hard time formulating an opinion about this because I'm not sure what I'm supposed to think, and that's kind of like what I'm talking about. Like I can't, form the thought myself, and I'm like, well, what? And I was trying to break away and think of, okay, if we did it, what would happen? What would be good? What would be bad? You know what I mean? And I couldn't do it. So I'm like, fine, I'll just listen to it. And then as they start talking, I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. Well, that makes sense too. Well, that makes sense. You know what I mean? And it's just like, okay, I'm getting it. But it's like, even people like us who typically don't want to conform to like what we're being told or like what the mainstream is, you know, it's even just watching TV is, has like warped my brain in a way that I can't make those thoughts myself. So I had to break out of it,
It's very easy to get sucked in by that, to get you're getting hypnotized in a sense, I mean, call that dramatic or, exaggerative or whatever you want to call it. The fact remains that you turn on the TV and, let's start mindlessly doing something else. Before you know it, like, you're suddenly seeing this commercial for the 7th time, and it's like, whoa, wait a minute, where did like 2 hours go? It's very easy to fall into this like trap of just letting that thing just kind of fucking lull you to do all your thinking, to tell you what products you need, and to give you your opinions about current events, and tell you what you should have for dinner, and whatever it is, like that's what it's designed for. Let's look at the I think I mentioned this before on the show, but look at the number of commercial minutes per broadcast and entertainment broadcast. How they've risen dramatically over the years. I actually just saw an article about how, I'm sure many more stations do this, but this was specifically about how TBS speeds up reruns of Seinfeld by like 7%, because that gives them up to 2 minutes extra on average of commercial time. Like if you go back from like the original episode as it was broadcast and play it side by side with a modern TBS rerun, the TBS rerun is noticeably ahead of the other one.
Yeah.
And I mean, why do you think that is? So it's not an accident. Somebody actually had to go in and do that. It's just disturbing.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you've noticed, if you go watching a TV show on Netflix, the average runtime of a network television show is 20 to 22 minutes. So that's like 8 to 10 minutes of commercials, because it's a 30-minute block. I mean, obviously we can do the math here. We're not stupid, but yeah, it's like 10 minutes of advertising. If you're watching like an old, I'll just use this as an example because it's on, we've watched it before, like an old Magnum PI episode or something like that. You're talking like the early to mid 80s. Yeah, that's an hour-long TV show. Their runtime is like 48 minutes or 50 minutes or something like that. Yeah. There's only 10 minutes of commercials and an hour of TV, as opposed to 10 minutes of commercials and a half an hour of TV now.
Right.
So yeah, it's basically like a mindless, stuck in a rut society. And you're right. And so it's very difficult just to know what hearing, is it true? I mean, I'm smart enough to know that if I turn on Fox News, 90% of it's going to be a lie or a bunch of bullshit, or it's spun up somehow. You know what I mean? And it's like, who can we listen to? Like, what new, like, who would you recommend to listen to? I mean, I would recommend, like I said, Democracy Now! It's pretty decent. I think it's unbiased. There's no corporate sponsorship really. I would pick that one. Who would you pick to get your news from?
It kind of changes frequently, because I feel like sometimes, as often as I settle on somebody who I decide is reputable, I find out some dark secret behind the scenes, and it sort of it taints them for me. I tend to. There's a program on RT, Russia Today, called Breaking the Set, and a lot of people say it's ironic to that you have to turn to a Russian state-sponsored network to get American truth. But they gave this particular host, Abby Martin, a lot of basically free reign to say whatever she wanted, even against Russia Today. So, and I cherry-pick stuff from that too. I don't accept anything 100%. I kind of like go in and go, all right, well, you make sense on this, but you don't really make sense on that. There's another one called The Young Turks.
I forgot about them. Yeah,
they're self-financed. They started from nothing and built a network. And they make a lot of good points. and there's a lot of stuff that I don't agree with there too. There's I guess that's probably about it for like video or like I don't know what non-print news. There is an independent thing called I think it's called The Real News on YouTube. They do a pretty good job. So I'd look into them. I'd recommend them. They tend to be very real, I guess, unfiltered, kind of. I don't want to say like dramatic, but they pull no punches. Like if you don't want to be bummed out by the news, maybe you shouldn't check them out because they're very honest. But it's a sad world we live in. As far as like print, I'm still a pretty big fan of the Guardian, I guess, overall. But there, like I said, there's stuff time to time I'm not really down with. I've checked out the Intercept from time to time. I think they still got a long way to go before they're kind of caught up to the same playing field as something like the Guardian.
Well, with the Intercept, I kind of feel like I definitely. Sorry, let me interject for a second. I definitely read them. As we've talked about before, one of their co-founders is Glenn Greenwald,
right.
Who is someone that, we usually will go to an opinion about something as soon as something really weird happens in the world or terrible. I think you're right, though. They don't really put out a lot of content yet. I mean, there's one point where I think I went 3 days where I checked their website and it was the same headline story that they had 3 days ago, or I might be embellishing. But yeah, I kind of feel like they're a little behind, like you said. But yeah, I usually, I don't agree with everything that Glenn Greenwald says either. And it's just it's not black and white sometimes. And I think, the flip side of his coin is that he's very kind of like, if you're not with me, you're against me kind of mentality. But to me, it's not, like I said, it's not black and white like that all the time. But yeah, I mean, that's definitely one of the print. I mean, you can't even really call it print anymore, but you know what I mean? Not like video. Yeah. But yeah, that's definitely one that I go to, especially if it comes to some kind of terrorism issue or our country's constant involvement with regime changes across the world, stuff like that. They usually have pretty decent stuff about that. But yeah, I'm sorry. Continue with what you were saying.
Well, I was just going to go from there into individual journalists themselves. Like I said, Abby Martin is a pretty, there are things that annoy me about her, but mostly it's her delivery, not necessarily her message. She's been on the Joe Rogan podcast a lot. She has her own website called MediaRoots.org. She's been an activist. She was involved in the Occupy Oakland protests before she became an anchor. So, it's nice to see somebody who kind of puts their money where their mouth is in a sense. I like Matt Taibbi, who writes for Rolling Stone. He usually writes a lot about, I don't know if usually, but for a while he was writing a lot about the corrupt Wall Street and banking industry people. But whatever he writes about, he pulls no punches. So I appreciate that. And there are a few other individual journalists, like Glenn Greenwald, like you said. There's another guy named Greg Palast. He's kind of under the radar, but he's got a long history of journalistic integrity. But ultimately, while it is a little more work to sort of have to piece together, this kind of patchwork of what you believe in or what you feel is true, I don't mind it because it makes me feel like I'm engaged and I'm thinking for myself and I'm actually having to go out and put it together myself as opposed to just going, yep, USA Today said it, so that's what, or Fox News or whatever have you. I just can't stomach when you start to just let yourself be brainlessly spoon-fed by any one place. That's when it gets dangerous, in my opinion.
Definitely. Well, yeah, I think you're right. It's more fun. I mean, it makes it fun to piece it together too. I mean, obviously, these aren't fun topics, but yeah, you feel like you're more engaged and stuff like that. And yeah, I've always had respect for the Washington Post because Bob Woodward's always been involved with the Washington Post. I mean, obviously, if Woodward and Bernstein, they broke the Watergate scandal. and famously never gave up their source until he was on his deathbed and dying. I've always respected him for that. I remember my 12th grade journalism teacher, Mr. Bosch, in Cortland High School. I wouldn't say like he worshipped Woodward and Bernstein, but he always made a joke at the beginning of the year that if like anyone ever mentioned Woodward and Bernstein, everybody would have to go, like out of respect to him or whatever. So that was always cool. But yeah, I mean, I always kind of had a little bit of affinity for the Washington Post, and like and you're right, like the New York Times is years ago I would have said, oh yeah, you can believe what the New York Times says, but they're really like up and down too. Like they'll be like spot on and they'll be completely off the map. And you're like, what is this guy talking about? But yeah, and funny, not funny. Something I read on the Intercept today about. Did you look at it today at all?
No, I haven't. No.
There was an article by Peter Moss on there about Stephen Kim, who's a State Department. Used to be a State Department official who has fallen under the crackdown on non-sponsored leaks by the Obama administration. He got put in jail because it was funny because like he worked for the State Department. Their media relations bureau introduced him to a journalist. His name's escaping me right now, but he was on Fox News. Supposedly leaked this guy information off a secret document and was going to be put through the ringer for it, and he finally pleaded. He did a plea deal where he took 13 months of prison instead of like 10 years, and it's ridiculous because like it's one of those he fell into the trap of the FBI like fooled him, in their questioning, and they tried to get him to admit like lie about stuff so they could get him for lying to FBI agents. You know how like they just kind of spin a trap, and basically even when they were investigating this, they said that the document he gave the guy information on was a nothing burger, they called it. It was absolutely no. I mean, you could take all the information in that document, you could find it on Google if you Googled it, and he still got put through the ringer for it. I thought that was pretty messed up. You know what I mean? So it's like kind of stuff like that. If I read an article and I'm like, holy crap, that's terrible, I usually believe it. You know what I mean? Because it's so, and it really is in an indirect way criticizing our current administration. Like why would they even care that this guy did that? I mean, I understand that in certain things, there's national security interests. You can't just say and tell journalists like things that would, hurt our country, because that's kind of the world we live in now. It's like it's all defined by what country you live in. I get that, but like it's just ridiculous that they ruined this guy's life, over.
Is this John Kiriakou you're talking about?
No, he's the guy that you're talking about. The guy that
the CIA whistleblower.
Yeah, the torture reporter or whatever. Yeah, he got off, didn't he? Or didn't he get out of prison?
Well, he did go to jail, but he is released now. Yeah.
Yeah, and that same thing. Talked to a reporter, and it wasn't like he didn't get. His charge wasn't he broke the story about the torture report. It's because he named some undercover operative and gave the guy's name to the journalist for the New York Times or something like that. That's what he got in trouble for. Not the fact that he like leaked any of this like sensitive information because he used someone's name. You know what I mean? Which I get. If you're an undercover agent, you're gonna blow your cover if your name comes out. But should we be even doing that anyway?
It's kind of like the Brian Williams thing. He was used as the scapegoat for his organization's larger crimes.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Talk about subjects that are infuriating. I mean, that's a road that if I get going down, I'm going to get worked up. And but yeah, it's disgusting.
Well, we talked about that last time too. They're really with the Brian Williams thing. To me, that like now there's two separate issues. One, yeah, he lied, and I can't trust him as a journalist. Two, it's a larger problem that you said he's a scapegoat for. An entire war and a blatant violation of international law. Right. That our country committed based on a bunch of lies that was fed to the public, and that's what we believed. And now we're like, has anything ever happened to Bush for it? Nothing. Technically he's a war criminal. And it's ridiculous.
His entire administration.
Anyway, but yeah, we kind of got off topic here. We were talking about the the dehumanization of the Muslims and stuff. And I did have another comment about what's going on. I guess recently or coming up soon, they're going to have a summit to combat extremism, and that's what Obama decided to call it. And of course, he's getting flack from his political enemies about how he's not calling it a summit on terrorism or anything like that. And, he needs to be calling it what it is and blah, blah, blah. And, of course, people like, Ted Cruz,
oh, God, of course.
Senator, I will use air quotes, Senator Ted Cruz, saying that he should call it what it is and blah, blah, blah. And it's funny because these people think that we're fighting Islam or like extreme or radical Islam. I'm like, first of all, you can't fight it. It's an abstract idea. Okay, it's not a person.
It's just like terrorism.
You're basically, exactly. You're fighting people that are using radical Islam as justification for what they're doing. Is what you're doing. You're not. It's nothing to do with the religion, and that's I think what we need to start to realize too. Like we said, not all of them are bad. It's a few people that are using a religion to justify what they're doing. Does not make someone who follows that religion as guilty as they are. And it was funny because they were saying that when Obama took over, they stopped calling it the war on terrorism. Like they said it a couple times, but they weren't throwing it out there like Bush's administration was. And when they raided Osama bin Laden's compound when they killed him, they found some of his personal correspondence and stuff saying that it was much harder to recruit for his organization because they stopped calling it the war on terror. So it wasn't like stirring up these emotions inside like these people that were on the verge of becoming a radical extremist. Right. So I mean that should just end the debate right there. Like he's not calling it that because when you call it that, you're just feeding in to the anti-American sentiment that's out there that makes these people want to do stuff. And not just American, but just anti-Western, whatever. Yeah. Anti-Christian, anti-Western, whatever you want to call it. It's just like, man.
That was my next point too. It's fighting fire with fire. I mean, I don't want to say we because I don't fucking subscribe to this shit. But statistically as a country, we view Muslims and we view the Middle East as this whatever the propaganda machine tells us to, that they're horrible extremists and they're a cancer and blah blah blah. But that you think they don't think the same thing about everything that goes on over here? Do you think they care that like some of us oppose drones going over there and bombing people indiscriminately? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like they don't give a fuck that some of us aren't on board with that. They see it all as the same problem.
Yep.
And how can you blame them?
You can't. And it's funny because I read another snippet on Democracy Now! About how we're actually considering selling unmanned drones to other countries to use. And I'm like, how about we just stop using unmanned drones, like to begin with? Like just stop or like cut back a little bit, whatever. I mean, you're going to have those people out there that are going to make the argument that, okay, well, if we bomb them conventionally, we're going to lose more civilians than we already do with drones. I'm like, the only reason why you're killing civilians with drones is because you're waiting for these supposed terrorists to go to a funeral or a wedding, and you don't give a shit who you kill along with them. And that's what it comes down to, Like, and not only that, if you start selling, I guess one of the caveats is that if we sell a drone to another country, they have to follow these certain guidelines about how to use the drone. Yeah. I'm like, yeah, bullshit. Like, it's so hard to regulate what another country's going to do with a weapon that we're going to sell. You know what I mean? I'm just like, get over it, man. Like, I hate everything sometimes, man. I don't know. But anyway, stop feeding into the bullshit about dehumanizing Muslims. Like, they're not terrible people, and I don't give a shit what Bill Maher says. Like, what was his argument about, like, they polled, like, a certain percentage of Muslims, and, like, they felt that if you left the religion that you should deserve death or something like that? Like,
yeah. Well, yeah.
Really?
I mean, that's anything like that where you take it from a poll is fucking suspect at best and bullshit at worst, because you're polling a segment of a population, and you're using that to, like, again, paint the entirety of that population with the same brush. Mm-hmm. I used to be a pretty big fan of Bill Maher, and then it became more apparent over the years, more and more and more, just how bought he is, just as bad as any of the people he rails against. He gave $1 million to Obama's last, election campaign. Yeah. Look, that's one side or another. That's a fucking vested interest in it. Period. Yep. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I give a shit a lot less these days about what Bill Maher has to say, and I keep turning back to what Bill Hicks has always had to say. I don't know how. And his quotes are, at this point, 20, 25, 30 years old, but they're just as relevant today as they were then, and I suspect they always will be. So, some of my favorite ones are quit putting a goddamn dollar sign on every fucking thing on this planet.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty appropriate. Money really is the root of all evil, and what's the motivation for selling unmanned drones to other countries? You know what I mean?
Yep.
Arming the world to profit off of it. It's disgusting. So
funny. It's funny about Bill Hicks because he was in our country. He was censored a lot.
Oh yeah.
And typically, was not as popular here. But when he went over to England, they fucking loved Bill Hicks.
Oh yeah.
And he wasn't censored. He sold out shows. They love that guy. Comes over here. I've seen clips of him arguing with people in his audience, completely not going along with the show, and people were yelling obscenities at him. He was getting people kicked out because they were just they were arguing because these are backwood redneck Americans that anything that you say against our country means you're an enemy, or something like that. And I feel bad for the guy, just not being well received here. But he was right. He was really, like you said, the dollar signs and everything. He was he was completely against any kind of marketing and advertising and the constant bullshit that marketers and advertisers try to get you to buy into to buy the product, and
just brings us back to the TV discussion. It's all cyclical. Yep. It's all circular. Because
here we are.
And this is, like I said, this is 25 years ago. It's all just as relevant. Just because it takes the form of the internet or Hulu or something, it doesn't mean that it's a different tool, but it's the same or the same end that it's being used for.
Right.
Keep us dumb, fat, and just happy enough to go along with whatever we're told to do.
Well, we hope that we have depressed you, and we've tried really hard, and hopefully you are sad and you hate your country now. We don't want you to hate your country. There are a lot of good things about our country, but there's also a lot of dirty laundry that they don't want you to know about. And we're not going to sit here and our show's not going to turn into an expose of America's dirty secrets or not. But if something relevant comes up, we'll talk about it, give you our opinion on it. Who's really depressing is Noam Chomsky. You ever listen to him talk about stuff?
Yeah, well, as he gets older, he just gets more and more fucker. Kind of like George Carlin did.
Yep.
I've got less time to live. Guess what? The gloves are coming on.
I know Noam. I'm sure that guy can string a bunch of sentences together for 15 minutes on why our country shouldn't be doing this and how we've screwed this up, and it's just. I feel when I'm listening to him, I feel he's scolding me. I don't know what he's talking about. You know what I mean? He's got that air of just bad, you're bad, and you're stupid because you don't know this. I agree with a lot of what he says, but it's very hard for me to listen to him. I just feel uneasy for some reason. I don't know. And I feel anybody who's interviewing him is just trying to say things that don't piss him off. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just really weird.
Well, he's another source of he can be a source of great information and points of view, but again, you have to kind of cherry pick what you take from him too because of that very fact. So yeah,
and of course that's just my opinion, so that's how it shapes my unoriginal thoughts in my head that I can't control. But yeah, we're working on that. I'm interested in reading some of his books actually, because he's written quite a few. Most notably 9/11. Was there any other choice or something like that, or any other way? I can't remember what it's called, but yeah. Anyway, so that's fun. Yeah. We're super Debbie Downers on the end of this show here, talking about Saturday Night Live and frivolous things to horrible bullshit. But what are you gonna do?
Right.
Start our own news station.
we could leave on, I guess, some of the more inspiring or positive Bill Hicks quotes, because he, at least he wasn't. I mean, I guess he didn't live long enough to become a totally bitter old man. So I feel like he was pretty well balanced. At least tried to be anyway. More than I think maybe a lot of people deserve in a way. So I mean, one of my favorite ones. This isn't quite uplifting yet, but it's kind of wake you up and see what we're talking about here. This is where we are at right now as a whole. No one is left out of the loop. We are experiencing a reality based on a thin veneer of lies and illusions, a world where greed is our god and wisdom is sin, where division is key and unity is fantasy, where the ego-driven cleverness of the mind is praise rather than the intelligence of the heart. I mean, I always thought that was pretty profound.
Yeah, it's pretty spot on.
The best quotes for me are the ones that just they say what you already know, but in a way that you never would have put together, I guess.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you're right. I mean, a lot of it, too, is just articulating something that you can't articulate. I guess that's pretty much what you just said. But,
right.
Yeah. Something that, you feel, you just never said it, or you couldn't find the words to say it.
Yeah. And there's a longer one about, I don't know if you've heard the "it's just a ride" thing he used to end certain routines with.
I remember that vaguely. You can read it, though. I'm sure other people have it.
Well, to end on a better note, I guess, or a little more uplifting note, it goes a little something like this. The world is like a ride in an amusement park, and when you choose to go on it, you think it's real, because that's how powerful our minds are. And the ride goes up and down and round and round. It has thrills and chills, and it's very brightly colored, and it's very loud, and it's fun for a while. Some people have been on the ride for a long time, and they begin to question, is this real, or is this just a ride? And other people have remembered, and they come back to us, and they say, hey, don't worry, don't be afraid ever, because this is just a ride. It's just a ride, and we can change it anytime we want. It's only a choice, no effort, no work, no job, no savings and money. A choice right now between fear and love. The eyes of fear want you to put bigger locks on your doors, buy guns, and close yourself off. The eyes of love instead see all of us as one. And here's what we can do to change the world right now to a better ride. Take all that money that we spend on weapons and defense each year, and instead spend it feeding and clothing and educating the poor of the world, which it would pay for many times over, not one human being excluded, and we could explore outer space together forever in peace. So, there is always hope. There is, you like we say, you cherry pick where you get your stuff. Don't let any one thing bog you down, even this show. Just know that you do have a choice at the end of the day.
You do. Sometimes you're going to make a good choice. Sometimes you're going to make a bad choice. But that's what living is, everybody. It's, learn from your mistakes. You're going to make a bad decision, a bad choice every once in a while.
Yep.
That's all I have to say about that. I don't really know. Yeah, I'm kind of off guard for this inspirational quote fest we're having here. So I don't really. I'll think of something better for next time. I'll write my own, and then we'll compare, and then we'll have a pissing contest to see who's better if you want. We're just kidding. Well, but yeah, don't even the stuff you listen to on our show. I mean, whatever we say. I mean, it's not necessarily true. I mean, it's mostly opinion based. You can tell we get a little bit impassioned about things too. Get a little crazy. I was getting a little nuts on that topic today too. It's very upsetting. It makes me mad that people think that way. But
I agree.
Anyway, all right. So I guess we'll leave it there. Anything coming up that we might be able to discuss next time? Maybe by the time you guys are listening to this, you probably haven't heard us in a couple of weeks, and we're still working through some technical difficulties of getting episodes 7 and 8 up for everybody to listen to, but we'll be there soon. By the time you hear this, you would have already heard it, so it doesn't even matter. But
these stories may be a little dated by the time you hear it, but they'll still be relevant because they always are. And we are always thinking of the next piece of business we can bring to you. But to that end, I don't have one on my brain yet. But this world is a fun and fascinating place, and all we have to do is wait a couple of minutes for the next big news story comes along.
Yeah, we can't wait. It's going to have something to do with war, I'm sure. A couple of things are coming up. We talked briefly about the new Star Wars comics that are coming out. So I think in our entertainment section next time. I have not picked up the new issues yet.
That was my next question.
I will try to do that this weekend, and then for our next podcast, I can talk about that a little bit. Yeah, I mean, it's funny because it's February is almost over. We're just chomping at the bit here to get us some Star Wars this December. Now, I don't want December to come that fast because it is freezing right now, and I want to enjoy some warmer months first. But yeah, I mean, I can't believe we started talking about this, and 2 months have gone by already, and 10 more to go.
Well, I did hear. Really, I don't know if you heard. I did hear a rumor. I don't know how true it is or not that J.J. Abrams is pushing for actually a late summer release now.
Oh wow!
I mean, I don't know how much validity there is to that, but that's interesting to consider.
As long as they don't sacrifice quality in that case. Maybe they're ahead of schedule. Well, you know, it's weird because Star Wars movies have always been released in May. Like every single one of them released in May, and this one's kind of breaking the mold by coming out in December. So I was kind of shocked by that. I mean, to me, whenever you release this movie, it's going to make billions of dollars. So
yeah.
Who cares when you put it out? But I would like late summer. You know, I'm down with that. I mean, I'm like anticipating the Avengers, not just because of the Avengers, but because of the stupid Star Wars trailer. I want to see what that looks like too.
Right.
Just nuts. Yay, happy things we can talk about. So that's the only thing I've got. Also, I'm almost finished reading the Two Towers, the second book of the Lord of the Rings. So I would like to talk about when I finish all three of them, I'd like to talk about the differences in the source material to the movies at that point as well. So there will be a lot of nerd talk going on.
All right. After a while. Well, I'll watch the cartoon so I can give the third perspective.
You picked the most irrelevant medium of all those that's been depicted in. So that's okay.
Damn you! How dare you?
Yay!
That was my first exposure to the world of J.R.R. Tolkien.
Yeah. What's that? You know, I never knew what that stood for, but it stands for John Ronald Reuel, R-E-U-E-L, Tolkien. So it's J.R.R. Tolkien. Huh. His name was John, actually. In case you didn't know, that's a fun fact.
JT.
No disrespect, but his name's John. Yeah, I do remember seeing a cartoon. I mean, that was years ago, right?
Yeah,
I saw a snippet of it. Yeah, I saw a snippet of it. Yeah, there was like something on when I was at grandma's being babysat. You know, I would watch like those, like we were talking about on the last episode, like David the Gnome and stuff like that. And I remember one afternoon in the summer they had like the cartoon of that. I had no idea what it was, but I do remember. It might not have been Lord of the Rings. I think it might have been the Hobbit cartoon.
Yeah, the Hobbit cartoon is what I used to rent all the fucking time when I was a kid, and I didn't ever have any idea what it was. I just knew that like it had dragons and like swords and, you know, knights and whatever in it, and I thought it was awesome.
Yep, that's pretty cool. All right, well, I guess we'll leave it there, folks. Once again, thanks for listening. Hopefully we didn't burn your candle out too much there with our depressing world affairs talks, but we'll get back into it next time. So I'm the cousin Adam. Thanks for listening.
I am your sometimes friend, Claude.
You're always my friend.
Fair enough. We will see you on episode 10. Peace.
Bye-bye.